Morning, friends. As you can see, I'm out here enjoying the morning out here by the lake again. It's my favorite time to be out here by the lake is early in the morning, still calm. There's a little bit of mist over the water and birds singing. It's just a beautiful place to be. And just wanted to share with you my view this morning from the lake. The last time I shared a video with you, we talked about Matthew chapter 7, verse 21, and how I used to be what I called a Matthew 7:21 Christian, where um, I would do stuff. I knew about Jesus, I knew about the Bible and about God in my head, and I would do things to check the blocks, thinking, okay, that's what's necessary. But in my late 20s, I realized that that is not what it means to be a true Christian. And in verse 721, Jesus actually says to some people that thought they'd done a lot of good stuff, and he said, I never knew you. And I encourage you to take a look at your faith, your relationship with Jesus, to see, do you really know Jesus personally? And does he know you? You don't want to be in that position at the end of your life where Jesus says, I never knew you. Which, of course, that leads us to the question of, well, how can you really truly know? Can you know? And this is a question that followers of Jesus have been asking for 2,000 years. In fact, John, one of the apostles of Jesus, he wrote a letter back in the first century to a bunch of churches. It was a circular letter. He wrote it to one, and they passed it around. And it's now in the Bible as what we call First John, the book of First John. And John addresses that question. He talks to the churches back then about how can you know that you are a believer, that you're truly saved, that you're not going to fall into that Matthew 7:21, I never knew you trap. Um, there's a great article. It's on a website called gotquestions.org. Um, and I'll post a link to that at the end of this video. You probably can't click on it from the video, but you can type it in and go there and read a really good article. It's all from the book of First John, and it addresses a whole bunch of questions about how can you really know. This is right out of the Bible. But I just wanted to share from you my personal experience of what changed for me um, when I realized that I was not saved. I did not know Jesus. I didn't have that personal relationship. And there were several things that happened or changed with me. One of the first things was I developed a hunger for God's Word. I wanted to read the Bible. I wanted to learn more about God. I wanted to see what God had to say about Himself and about Jesus and about how we're supposed to live our lives. I just had a hunger for wanting to read God's Word. Where prior to that, yeah, I had a Bible. I opened it every once in a while. It was more of a chore or something I did out of a sense of duty, but I didn't really care all that much about it. Well, after I accepted Jesus and realized that I needed to have a relationship with Him, excuse me, I went out and bought a new Bible, one written in modern English, not the old King James English, which is really, it's almost like reading a foreign language in King James version. And I started reading the Bible, and I have had ever since a hunger for God's Word. I read it every day. Um, I'm always reading and rereading God's Word because that's how He reveals Himself to us. Is through one of the ways is through His Word. Another thing that changed for me is I had a desire to want to be with God's people, with other Christians, to spend time in fellowship with them, spend time worshiping with them in church and in Bible studies and just outside of church, just hanging out with other believers, whether it be fishing or camping or just sitting around a fire and talking, playing games, whatever it might be. I wanted to be with God's um, people, to spend time in fellowship. Another thing that changed was my attitudes, a lot of my attitudes toward work, my attitudes toward marriage. I realized that uh, it's all about glorifying God in everything that we do, whether our work and through marriage and our relationships with other people. It's all about glorifying God and being a good witness and good example to others. Basically, my worldview changed, how I see the world, um, and how I see life in general. The other thing that changed for me is I realized that I am a sinner. I'm still a sinner. Um, but I am now a sinner saved by grace through faith in Jesus. And my sin, it bothers me. It grieves me when I sin. I am not perfect. I am still a sinner. Because you become a Christian does not mean that you are suddenly a perfect person. Far from it. But the thing that changed is I realize I'm a sinner and my sin bothers me, so I strive to avoid sin, to grow and change to be more like Christ. That's all part of the process of when you become a Christian. It's called the sanctification process or progressive sanctification. Is you're not perfect, but you're striving to grow and change to be more like Christ. And I still sin, I still fall down, but I confess that when I do make a mistake, uh, and I try to avoid as much as possible. But we don't become perfect, and I never will be, and I realize I never will be. But it's a continual process. Um, I also would say that my fear of death changed. Now, I still don't look forward to the dying process, the pain that may come and suffering that may come along with that, pain and suffering it may cause to family and friends and loved ones. Um, but I do have a hope for the future, for what for knowing that this isn't all there is, that there is an afterlife, there is a heaven, there is something to look forward to past what we're experiencing on this earth. So um, Paul, the Apostle Paul, wrote that to live is Christ, to die is gain, meaning that while we're still alive, we're serving and living and glorifying God. But once we die, we have all of heaven and all of eternity to spend with with Jesus and with fellow believers, and that is something to look forward to. It's not Death is not something to be feared uh, necessarily. You need to be fearful of that. So another thing that has changed is a desire to tell other people about Him. Um, Jesus doesn't want us to keep this a secret. This is good news. That's what gospel means. We're called to go out and share the gospel, the good news of what Jesus has done for him. So we have a desire to know him, but also to make him known, and to live our lives in a God honoring way before people, to be an ambassador and a witness for people in all that we do in our lives, and also to use our words to tell other people about him, like I'm doing now. Um, it's not something that he wants us to be shy about and to keep as a secret. You tell it and give people an opportunity to make their own choices. You can't force it on somebody when it comes right down to it. It's a decision that everybody has to make on their own. All I can do is plant the seeds, tell you about it, and then it's up to you to make that choice or not. But I do firmly believe that it is the most important decision you will ever make in your entire life, and it should not be taken lightly. You should not blow it off. You need to investigate it and decide one way or the other. It's an irrevocable decision at the end of this life, I'm afraid to say. So you better get it right, and you better make sure if you're going to decide not to, you better make sure you understand the consequences or what you're doing with that. Now, as I mentioned, there are lists in First John. I would encourage you to go and read that, or to go to this website that I'm going to list or post here, that you can go and read about this article. Um, it's all about growing and changing. Well, anyway, that's my view from the lake today. I hope you and your family are all safe and well and healthy. Semper Paratus.